The Elythian Dominion was a name known across the galaxy, known not only for their beauty, but also for their power. Their species possessed abilities far beyond that of most races. They were a peaceful people, never meddling in galactic conflicts. But today, that peace was about to be shattered. Captain Elias Voss of the Terran Union stood alone at the observation deck of his ship, staring out into the void of space. The hum of the engines beneath him was a constant reminder that he was always moving, always preparing for the next battle. The war with its Selvari Empire had stretched on for years, and Elias, as one of the most respected strategists in the Union, was expected to win this war. The stakes were high, the pressure even higher. Yet in the quiet of space, he found no comfort. There was no peace, only the weight of responsibility. It was then that she appeared. Her name was Celia Viriton, an alien woman from the Elythian species, and she was unlike any creature Elias had ever met. She walked with grace, her every step seeming to glide across the deck, her long silver hair cascading over her shoulders, shining as if it was woven from starlight itself. Her violet eyes locked onto his, intense and filled with purpose. Elias, though no stranger to strange visitors, raised an eyebrow. The Elythians were known for their neutrality, their refusal to take sides in the galaxy's many conflicts. He had seen them before at peace talks, always standing quietly in the background, observing. He never expected one of them to approach him personally. Captain Voss. Celia's voice was soft, but carried a certain weight, as though each word had been carefully chosen. I come not to fight, but to offer my assistance. Elias felt a rush of questions flood his mind, but he kept them in check. His eyes narrowed as he studied her. Assistance, he repeated, skeptical. I'm not sure we need the help of an Elythian. Your people are neutral. A smile tugged at the corner of her lips. It wasn't a smile of mockery or amusement, but something more cryptic, as if she knew something he didn't. I am aware of your people's abilities, she said, your courage, your resilience, but I have something that could change the course of this war. Elias stood a little straighter, his interest piqued despite himself. He had heard rumors of the Elythians' abilities, their precognitive powers, their control over the mind, but never had he imagined they would choose to offer it to humanity. He couldn't shake the feeling that this woman wasn't just an alien diplomat or an outsider. She seemed different. I don't trust outsiders, Elias replied bluntly, crossing his arms. Especially ones with powers we don't fully understand. I understand, Celia said, her gaze unwavering. But trust me when I say that if you let me stay by your side, you will not regret it, human. Her words were calm, but there was something undeniably confident in them. She wasn't asking for permission. She was stating a fact. Elias found himself momentarily speechless. Her confidence was disarming, almost unsettling. He wasn't sure why, but there was something about her that made him feel like he was standing on the edge of something important. He wasn't sure if it was the sincerity in her eyes or the way her presence seemed to fill the room with an unseen energy. You speak as if you already know what will happen, Elias said, his voice quieter now. Searching. How can I trust that? You will know when the time comes, she answered cryptically. But for now, let me prove my value. Elias hesitated. He had been fighting this war for so long, each victory coming at a great cost. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was the strange calm that radiated from her, but something made him consider her offer. Could she really help? Could the Elythians, a species known for their distance from galactic conflict, be the key to winning the war? Celia took a step closer, not in a threatening way, but with the same slow, deliberate grace. I do not seek to control you, Captain. I seek only to assist. She paused, her violet eyes gleaming. Your people are powerful, yes, but you have yet to unlock your true potential. Elias frowned, a mix of curiosity and suspicion swirling within him. True potential, he repeated, unsure if he understood what she was implying. She nodded, her voice soft, but filled with an undeniable certainty. I see in you, and in your people, something greater, a strength that has yet to be realized. Allow me to help you unlock it." Elias was silent for a long moment, the weight of her words pressing down on him. The war had drained him, and the possibility of a new kind of power, it was hard to ignore. Still, trust wasn't something easily given. Finally, he nodded. "All right, Celia, I'll give you a chance, but if you're playing me, I won't hesitate to act." Her smile returned, this time warmer. "You won't regret it, human. I promise." And with that, the first steps of an unlikely partnership were set in motion. Little did Elias know, this was just the beginning of a much larger journey. A journey that would change the fate of humanity forever. The next few days aboard the Terran Union's flagship, the Revenger, were unlike any Elias had experienced. It wasn't just the endless scheming of war councils or the constant preparations for the Scifi Empire's next move. There was something else, an underlying shift in the atmosphere, a tension he couldn't fully place. Captain Elias Voss found himself increasingly drawn to Celia Verton, the Alithian woman who had promised him that she would not be a regret. At first, he had been cautious. He had allowed her presence, but kept his distance. He had no need for distractions, not when so much was at stake. But over the last few days, Elias had begun to notice something remarkable about her. Celia's precognitive abilities were undeniable. Time and again, during planning sessions and strategy meetings, her quiet suggestions had turned out to be spot on. Small hints that seemed almost impossible to anyone else had led them to avoid traps, outmaneuver enemy ships, and find hidden weaknesses in the Scifi forces. Her mind, sharp as a blade, saw things that no human could. Yet, for all her help, Elias remained cautious. He had to. The Scifi were dangerous, cunning, and ruthless. If Celia was really as helpful as she seemed, why had she chosen him? Why now? And more importantly, what was the cost? One morning, as Elias stood in front of the Ravenger's command center, looking over maps of Altaurus 9, a crucial planet that held the gateway to a larger Scifi invasion route, he felt the weight of the galaxy bearing down on him. The war had already taken a toll on his soul. But this mission, this planet, was something different. Altaurus 9 wasn't just strategically important. It was a symbol of humanity's will to resist. "Captain," Celia's voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to find her standing by his side, her long silver hair almost glowing in the dim light of the command room. Her eyes, violet and intense, fixed on him with a strange sense of purpose. "Are you ready?" she asked, her tone calm, but not without a touch of anticipation. Elias nodded, although part of him felt unsure. The Scifi had not shown their full strength yet. He suspected they were waiting for the right moment, but he didn't know when that moment would come. The attack on Altaurus 9 was imminent, and Elias had to be ready. "We're ready," he said, his voice firm. "But there's something you haven't told me, Celia." She raised an eyebrow, clearly waiting for him to continue. "I've been noticing your abilities, your predictions, your insights, but there's something you haven't shared with me yet," Elias said, stepping closer to her. "You've helped me dodge every trap the Scifi have set so far. But why are you really here?" Celia's lips parted slightly, her gaze softening. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "I didn't just come to warn you of enemy traps, Captain. I came because there's more at stake than you know. The Scifi's true goal isn't just to conquer the galaxy. They'd want to destroy you." Elias frowned. "Me? Why would they want to destroy humanity?" Celia sighed, her violet eyes gazing far away, as if seeing something just beyond his reach. The Scifi Empire sees humans as a threat, a potential threat that they cannot control. "You've been underestimated, Elias. Your people have always been underestimated." Elias didn't understand. He had fought in countless battles, seen human ingenuity turn the tide in situations where no one thought they could win. But he never imagined that humans were seen as a threat to such a vast empire. Could they really fear humanity that much? Celia continued, her voice steady. The Scifi believe that humanity has the potential to become the most powerful species in the galaxy. They are afraid of what you might become if you ever unlock your full potential. Elias blinked in disbelief. He had always thought humanity had the will to win wars. But to hear that the Scifi feared humanity's future, it didn't sit right with him. He was just one person, one soldier. He had always believed that humans were resilient, but he didn't see them as anything extraordinary. Not yet. What are you saying? Elias asked, his voice quieter now, filled with confusion. What does that mean? What potential? Celia smiled, though it wasn't a smile of reassurance. Instead, it was something else, a mix of understanding and mystery. Humans are special, Elias. You've always been more than you know. Before he could ask her to explain further, the alert lights blared across the room. The Scifi fleet had been spotted near Altaurus 9. The time for talk was over. Celia turned to the monitor screen, her face becoming more focused, her presence calm amidst the chaos that was about to unfold. It's time, she said softly. But remember, the real war isn't just about defeating the Scifi. It's about understanding what they're truly afraid of. As the alert sounded throughout the ship, Elias felt a chill run down his spine. The Scifi were here. The battle for Altaurus 9 had begun. And with it, Elias's journey into a deeper mystery than he had ever imagined. The battle for Altaurus 9 began with the roar of engines and the flashing of lasers. Ships of the Terran Union and the Scifi Empire collided in the vast emptiness of space, their weapons tearing through the darkness like thunder. Captain Elias Voss stood at the heart of it all, his gaze locked on the battle unfolding across the view screen. The hum of the Ravengers command center surrounded him, but his thoughts were far from the humdrum of war. They were on Celia. She had said the true war wasn't with the Scifi. The real battle was about understanding the threat they posed and what humanity's potential might unlock. But in the chaos of the present, Elias couldn't fully grasp the weight of her words. All he knew was that his people, humanity, were on the edge of something incredible, that Scifi had feared them. And Elias now realized that fear was not without reason. Celia stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the enemy ships, her hands moving in a dance of delicate, invisible gestures. She wasn't touching any control panels, yet the Ravenger seemed to respond to her, as though her very presence was guiding it. Elias couldn't explain it, but he had learned not to question her. She had already proven herself. Captain. Celia's voice broke through the cacophony of the battle, soft yet piercing. The enemy is using a false signal to lead us into a trap. Elias' eyes snapped to her. A trap? How do you know? She didn't respond with words. Instead, her violet eyes closed briefly, her expression serene, as though she were listening to something that only she could hear. Then she opened her eyes again and spoke, her tone firm. I see the pattern. The Scifi are predictable once you understand their strategy. Elias didn't fully understand how Celia's mind worked, but he trusted her now. All right, what should we do? She raised her hand, pointing to a section of the Scifi fleet. We have to cut off their reinforcements. They're waiting for a second wave to break through. If we strike now, we can force them to retreat. Elias quickly gave the orders to his fleet, relaying the strategy that Celia had suggested. Within moments, the Terran Union forces shifted course, moving to intercept the Scifi reinforcements. The sudden change in tactics threw the enemy off balance, and for a moment, the battlefield felt like it was shifting in humanity's favor. The Ravenger moved through the chaos, its weapons firing in perfect synchronization with the fleet's new strategy. Elias watched, heart pounding, as his forces tore through the Scifi lines. Each maneuver felt effortless, guided by a mind far sharper than any human could hope for. Celia stood by him, her calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the chaos. She was not just a strategist. She was something else. Her mind reached out, guiding not only the ship but the entire battle. Elias began to see how truly powerful she was. She wasn't just reading the enemy's moves, she was seeing beyond them, seeing the threads that connected the battlefield, the flow of the war that no one else could grasp. She was more than a soldier or a strategist. She was a force of nature. Elias, she said, breaking his focus for a moment, the Scifi are not the real threat. He turned to her, his brow furrowed. What do you mean? She looked at him, her violet eyes filled with a deep understanding. The Scifi are pawns in a much larger game. Someone is pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Elias couldn't hide his confusion. You mean there's someone controlling them? Celia nodded. Not just controlling. They are using the Scifi to test something, to see how far humanity can be pushed. If they succeed in this war, they will have learned everything they need to break humanity's spirit. Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The war was never just about defeating the Scifi. It was about something far deeper, something much darker. And you know who's behind all of this? I do, Celia replied, her voice barely a whisper. But I cannot share that with you yet. Not until the time is right. Elias didn't press her. There was a weight in her words that made him uneasy. Instead, he focused back on the battle, realizing that the Scifi were retreating faster than he had anticipated. It was as if the sudden shift in strategy had broken their will to fight. They had never expected humans to act so decisively. But as the Terran Union forces pushed forward, the victory felt hollow. Celia's warning echoed in his mind. The Scifi were pawns. Someone, or something, else was behind them, pulling the strings. The battle was only the beginning. As the Reventer pulled away from the battlefield, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they had only uncovered a small fraction of the truth. The Scifi retreat was a victory, yes, but the war was far from over. And whatever force lay behind the Scifi, it was watching. Celia's voice once again broke through his thoughts. You see now, don't you, Elias? This is just the beginning. The real battle is still to come. Elias turned to face her, his mind racing. He had thought they were winning, that they had turned the tide. But the unease in Celia's tone made him question everything. He wasn't sure what was coming next, but one thing was clear. The true enemy was out there, hidden in the shadows. And humanity was about to be caught in the middle of a war much larger than they ever imagined. The victory over the Scifi Empire at Altoris IX had been swift and decisive, but the sense of triumph was short-lived. As the Terran Union fleet pulled back from the battle zone, Elias couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something much larger was at play. The Scifi were retreating, yes, but their defeat felt too easy. Celia had warned him. The real war was far beyond the fight with the Scifi. As the Revenger made its way back to the fleet's main command base, Elias found himself restless. The command center was quiet, but his thoughts were anything but. Celia's words echoed in his mind, warning him that the Scifi were only pawns in a larger game. But what did she mean? Who or what could be pulling the strings behind the Scifi? He didn't have answers yet, but he knew that time was running out. Humanity had been winning battles. But if there was an even greater force lurking in the shadows, they needed to uncover it, fast. Elias found Celia in her quarters, staring out the window at the endless stars beyond. Her posture was relaxed, but there was something about her presence that made him feel uneasy. It was as if she was no longer just a part of the ship. She was something else, something beyond human understanding. Celia, Elias began, his voice a mixture of urgency and confusion. We need answers. The Scifi may be retreating, but we both know this isn't over. You said someone else is behind all of this. Who are they? What are they after? Celia didn't turn around. She simply continued to gaze at the stars, her face unreadable. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice soft, almost sad. You're right, Captain. It's not over. But what I'm about to tell you, it's not something you're ready to hear. Elias took a step forward, his eyes locking onto her. "I need to know, Celia. We're running out of time." She turned slowly, her violet eyes meeting his with a strange intensity. There was something in those eyes, a hint of something ancient, something deep. It made Elias feel like he was staring into the heart of the universe itself. "That Scifi were never the true enemy," she said quietly. "They were the first test, Elias. The real enemy is something much older, much more powerful. The sentience." Elias felt his heart skip a beat. "The sentience," he repeated. He had heard whispers of such a race. Ancient, nearly mythical beings who had once ruled the galaxy and vanished millennia ago. No one truly knew what had happened to them, but their power was legendary. "Yes," Celia said, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. "The sentients are the ones behind the Scifi. They have been manipulating the galaxy from the shadows for eons. Their goal is simple, to keep humanity from realizing its potential." Elias felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. "But how? How can they be controlling the Scifi? They're an entire empire. How do they fit into all of this?" Celia stepped closer to him, her presence as calm and steady as ever. "The sentients are ancient beings who possess unimaginable power. They can manipulate minds, control entire civilizations, even alter the fabric of reality itself. They have used the Scifi as pawns for centuries, testing humanity, trying to understand how far your species will go. They want to know whether you will awaken your true potential, or whether you will be wiped out before you can." Elias was silent for a long moment, processing the information. The idea that an ancient race, hidden for millennia, had been pulling the strings behind the galaxy's conflicts was almost too much to grasp. But Celia's calmness, the way she spoke with such certainty, made him believe her. She knew things that no one else did. "So, if they've been watching humanity all this time, what do they want with us? Why now?" Elias asked. Celia hesitated for a moment before answering. "The sentients are afraid of humanity, Elias, afraid of your potential. They see in you something that they cannot control, something that could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. For centuries, they've kept you from evolving, kept you from realizing your full strength. They've used the Scifi's wars, as a way to test you, to see if you can be manipulated. But they didn't count on one thing." Elias frowned. "What's that?" Celia looked at him, her expression almost sad, but with a spark of hope. "They didn't count on you, Elias Voss. They didn't count on the human spirit, your resilience, your ability to adapt, to learn. You and your people, you have the strength to break free from their control. You have the power to unlock your true potential, and if you do, you will be a force unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen." Elias stood frozen, a mix of awe and fear growing inside him. Could it be true? Could humanity really be capable of such power? And if so, what would it mean for the galaxy? The weight of Celia's words hung heavy in the air. There was no turning back now. The real battle had just begun. Elias sat in the quiet command center of the Ravenger, staring at the vast expanse of space outside the window. The battle for Altaurus 9 had been won, but the words Celia had shared with him echoed through his mind, louder than the sounds of the war outside. The sentients, ancient beings who had shaped the galaxy in ways no one fully understood, were the true threat. Not the Scifi Empire, not the endless wars. It had all been a test, a game to see if humanity could rise to its full potential. The thought was overwhelming. Elias had always known humanity was resilient, but this was something different. The sentients were more than just powerful. They were ancient, far beyond anything the humans had ever encountered. And they were afraid of humanity. "Captain," a voice called, pulling him out of his thoughts. He turned to see Lieutenant Sarin standing at the door, her expression grave. "The Scifi have sent a distress signal. They're requesting an audience." Elias stood up, his mind racing. It didn't make sense. After their defeat, why would the Scifi be asking for peace talks? Were they trying to buy time? Or was something else going on? I'll meet with them, Elias said. Prepare the meeting room. Celia's voice, calm and steady, echoed in his mind. The Scifi are not the real enemy. The sentients are using them as pawns. He had to stay focused. They had won this battle. But the war was far from over. And now, the Scifi were asking for something more than surrender. They wanted to speak. As Elias made his way to the meeting room, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The Scifi were ruthless, calculating. Why would they choose now to make contact? He entered the room, where the Scifi ambassador, a tall, cloaked figure with glowing red eyes, awaited him. The Scifi were an imposing species, their alien features always unsettling, but Elias kept his composure. He had faced their soldiers countless times. He would not be intimidated now. Captain Elias Voss. The ambassador's voice was smooth, almost mechanical. We come to discuss terms of surrender. Elias raised an eyebrow. Surrender? After your fleet was decimated. The ambassador nodded. The Scifi Empire recognizes your strength, Captain. We underestimated humanity. But our mission was not to destroy. It was to test. Elias felt his heart tighten. Test? What did that mean? Test. He repeated. What kind of test? The Scifi ambassador's red eyes glowed brighter as he spoke. The sentients have always tested the species they encounter. You, Captain, and your people were their final test. They believe humanity has the power to challenge the balance of the galaxy. They believe you can become something greater than you realize, but only if you pass this test. Elias's mind raced. The sentients, they weren't just testing humanity. They were trying to control it. But why? What did they fear so much? You've been used, Captain, the ambassador continued. The sentients have controlled us for millennia. The Scifi have always been their pawns, their tools. But we've learned that we are more than that. We do not wish to be their tools any longer. And we do not want to see humanity fall to them. Elias stared at the ambassador, his mind processing the new information. The Scifi had been under the influence of the sentients this whole time, just like Celia had said. But now, they were asking for something different. Why come to us now? Elias asked. Why not before? Because now, the sentients have shown their hand, the ambassador said, his voice heavy with regret. They believe that humanity will either be destroyed or will become a tool in their hands. But we've seen what you are capable of. You do not belong under their control. Elias was silent for a moment, absorbing the ambassador's words. The Scifi were no longer just enemies to be crushed. They were victims in this war too, victims of a much greater power. Then what do you want from us? Elias asked. We want to join you, the ambassador replied. The Scifi will stand with humanity. Together, we can fight the sentients. We can end their control over us and end their manipulation of the galaxy. If you will have us. Elias was stunned. He had always seen the Scifi as the enemy. Now they were asking for an alliance against a power far greater than either of them. Celia's voice filled his mind again. The sentients are afraid of humanity's potential, and they will stop at nothing to ensure that humanity never reaches it. The decision weighed heavily on Elias. Could he trust the Scifi? They had been enemies for so long, but the sentients were the true enemy. If the Scifi were willing to stand with humanity against them, Elias knew he had little choice. I'll need to consult with my leaders, Elias said, his voice steady. But if what you say is true, we have a greater enemy to fight, and we cannot fight it alone. The Scifi ambassador bowed his head. Thank you, Captain. We are ready to stand with you. As the ambassador left the room, Elias couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision before him. The battle against the Scifi might be over, but the true war had only just begun. And now, Elias had to decide whether humanity could trust its former enemies in a fight against a power much darker than anything they had ever faced. The weight of the decision lingered heavily on Captain Elias Voss as he sat in his quarters aboard the Revenger. The message from the Scifi ambassador still echoed in his mind. The once fierce enemies who had waged war against humanity for years were now offering an alliance. They'd wanted to join forces to fight a greater threat, the sentients. Elias had always believed in the strength of humanity. He had seen it time and time again, in the battlefields, in the courage of his crew, in the resolve of every soldier fighting to defend their home. But this was something new. An alliance with the Scifi. Could they truly be trusted? After all, these were the same beings who had sent fleets to destroy humanity, to test their strength. But the ambassador's words had stuck with him. That Scifi had been pawns of the sentients, just like humanity could be. Now, they were offering their help, recognizing that the sentients were a far greater enemy than anyone had realized. If what they said was true, humanity and that Scifi had a common enemy, one that had been manipulating the galaxy for eons. Celia's voice broke into his thoughts. Her calm, steady presence was a constant source of strength, even in the most uncertain moments. "Elias," she said softly, stepping into the room, "I know what you're thinking. That Scifi are unpredictable, and trusting them may feel impossible." Elias turned to face her. He had spent so much time trying to understand her, trying to figure out what she was truly capable of, and now he was relying on her insights more than ever. "I don't know what to think anymore, Celia. That Scifi have been our enemies for so long. How do we know they're not just trying to use us? The sentients are the real threat here, and we don't even know what they're capable of." Celia looked at him, her violet eyes glowing with a strange wisdom. "The sentients have been hiding in the shadows, manipulating the galaxy for centuries. They have always feared humanity's potential, but they underestimate you, Elias. They think they can control you, but they don't understand how your kind thinks, how you adapt, how you fight. That Scifi, too, were once used and manipulated by them. They understand the danger the sentients pose." Elias crossed his arms, still unsure. "I don't know if I can trust them, even if they claim to be on our side now." Celia's voice grew even more serious. "You don't have to trust them completely, but the Scifi know what the sentients are capable of. They have fought under their control for generations. They understand the sentient strategy better than anyone else. Humanity needs this alliance, Elias. Together, you can learn the sentients' weaknesses, their tactics. You can defeat them. Alone, you may never stand a chance." Elias stared out the window of his quarters, his gaze lost in the endless stars beyond. He knew she was right. The sentients were an enemy unlike anything humanity had ever faced, and even the Scifi, with their advanced technology and military strength, had been pawns in their game for centuries. But Celia was also right about one thing. Humanity had something the sentients could never understand. They had something that made them unpredictable, made them dangerous in ways that even ancient, all-powerful beings could never prepare for. "I know what I have to do," Elias said at last, his voice firm. "I have to bring this to the council. If we're going to fight the sentients, we can't do it alone. We need every ally we can get." Celia nodded, a small smile appearing on her face. "You understand now, Elias. This is your path, humanity's path, and you will not walk it alone." With a newfound sense of purpose, Elias walked with Celia to the fleet's command center, where the leaders of the Terran Union awaited him. The room was filled with tension, the weight of the decision about to be made hanging in the air. The council members, once so sure of their mission to destroy the Scifi, now looked to him for guidance. Captain Voss, the lead counselor, Admiral Delara, spoke first. "We've received reports of the Scifi's request for peace. What is your assessment of their offer?" Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward. "The Scifi are not our true enemy. They have been manipulated by the sentients, just as we have been. But they have now recognized the threat we all face. They want to join us in a fight against the sentients, and I believe we must accept their offer." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Some of the council members looked uncertain, others shocked. But Elias remained steady. He had made up his mind. "Captain," Admiral Delara said, her voice full of doubt, "are you suggesting we trust them? After everything they've done, can we really afford to gamble with our future like this?" Elias looked each council member in the eye, his voice unwavering. "The sentients are a threat unlike any we've ever faced. If we want to survive, we need to work together, humanity and the Scifi. Only together can we stand a chance." For a long moment, there was silence in the room. Finally, Admiral Delara nodded, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Very well," she said. "We will proceed with the alliance. But know this, Captain. If they betray us, we will not hesitate to destroy them." Elias nodded, knowing the stakes had just become even higher. That Scifi may have offered an alliance, but there was no guarantee that they would honor it. The sentients would not stand idly by, and Elias knew that the true test was still ahead. As he left the command center, Elias felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. The war for humanity's future was far from over. And now, with the Scifi as unlikely allies, they had a chance to challenge the sentients. A chance to survive. But it was a fragile hope. The real battle was about to begin. The alliance had been formed, but the true test was just beginning. The Terran Union and the Scifi Empire stood together in the vastness of space, united against a common enemy, the sentients. The Council had agreed to the alliance, but trust was still fragile, and every decision had far-reaching consequences. Elias could feel the weight of it all on his shoulders as he stood at the helm of the Revenger. The fleet had gathered near the edge of Vandrel's reach, a vast area of space that was said to be the last known location of the sentients' hidden stronghold. It was a place where time seemed to slow, where the laws of physics bent and twisted in ways that defied all logic. It was the perfect place for the sentients to hide, and Elias knew they had to strike fast before they disappeared again. "We've made contact with the Scifi fleet," Lieutenant Sarin reported, her voice steady as she sat at her console. "They're ready for the assault. They've agreed to work together, Captain. The sentients won't see this coming." Elias nodded, but he wasn't completely convinced. The Scifi had promised their help, but could they really be trusted? The fear of betrayal still lingered in his mind. However, he had no choice but to move forward. The sentients had to be stopped, no matter the cost. Celia approached him, her presence calm yet powerful as always. "You've made the right choice, Elias," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight of experience. "Together, you and the Scifi can defeat the sentients. They're more afraid of humanity than you realize." Elias turned to her, his gaze filled with determination. "I hope you're right, Celia. If we fail here, everything we fought for will have been in vain." Celia's eyes glowed with that strange intensity he had come to trust. "You've already won, Elias. The sentients fear you. That's why they've held back. They know that if humanity ever awakens its true power, they will have no chance of controlling it." The words settled in Elias's mind, and for the first time, he felt a sense of hope, a hope that they could actually win this war. But even with that hope, the battle ahead was uncertain. The Revenger's engines hummed as the fleet moved into position. The Scifi ships, sleek and powerful, formed a protective ring around the human fleet. Together, they approached the heart of Vandrel's reach, where the sentients had built their fortress, a place so well hidden that only a few had ever lived to speak of it. Elias stood in the command center, his fingers resting on the controls, his eyes locked on the forward display. He knew this would be a battle unlike any other. The sentients weren't just enemies. They were ancient, godlike beings who had shaped the galaxy in ways no one could fully comprehend. Their power was beyond anything humanity had ever faced. "Ready for the assault, Captain," Sarin called out. Her voice was tense, but determined. Elias looked over at the Scifi ambassador, who stood beside him. The alien's eyes glowed a deep red, the light from the stars reflecting off his smooth, dark skin. His presence was a reminder of everything that had led to this moment. "Are you ready?" Elias asked, his voice steady. The ambassador nodded. "We are ready. The sentients will not stop us this time. Together, we will end their reign." The Ravenger and the Scifi fleet surged forward into the heart of the sentients' territory. The space around them warped, the stars bending as they entered the strange, unpredictable zone that the sentients had created to protect themselves. Suddenly, the darkness of space around them shifted. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp, and strange, ghostly shapes appeared, flickering in and out of existence. The sentients were watching, observing. Elias's heart raced. He had prepared for this moment his whole life, but nothing could have fully prepared him for what he saw next. A massive, shadowy form appeared before them, a towering, otherworldly presence. It was as if the universe itself had come alive, a being of pure energy, its eyes glowing with an ancient power. The sentients had revealed themselves. "We are the sentients," a voice boomed, not from a single source, but from everywhere at once. "You dare challenge us, humans. You are nothing but children playing at war. You cannot comprehend the forces you face." Elias gripped the controls tightly. He had expected this. The sentients had always been arrogant, believing they were beyond anything the universe could throw at them. But humanity had something they didn't understand: willpower. "We are not afraid of you," Elias called back, his voice echoing through the command center. "We have faced your tests. We have fought your wars. And now, we are done being your pawns. Humanity stands united, and we will not fall." There was silence for a moment, as if the sentients were considering his words. Then their voice spoke again, filled with an eerie calm. "So be it. But know this: you cannot win. The galaxy belongs to us, and all who defy us will be destroyed." The first attack came without warning. Beams of raw energy shot from the sentients' fortress, striking the Ravenger and the Scifi ships with the force of 1,000 suns. The ships rocked violently as shields flared and hulls groaned under the strain. But Elias held firm. The Ravenger shuddered but didn't break. The Scifi fleet, their ships sleek and powerful, retaliated with precision, unleashing their deadly weapons. And then, for the first time, Elias understood what Celia had meant. Humanity and the Scifi, together, were a force the sentients had never anticipated. The battle for the galaxy had begun.